Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Nursing News You Can Use. Usually we're live at 5, but we're a little behind our time today because we had a very important meeting that ran over its time. As always, I try to come with you as fast as I can and get that too. So I had an appointment. So apologize for the being late, but we're better late than never. We do have some news for you today. And I want to start off with our affirmations for today, December the 6th, 2023. And our first inspirational quote is from Marcus Aurelius. Waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be one. Waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be one. Our next inspirational quote, always go with the choice that scares you the most because that's the one that is going to help you grow. Always go with the choice that scares you the most because that's the one that is going to help you grow. And then lastly, from David Goggins, you have to be a good individual first before you can be a good team player. You have to be a good individual first before you can be a good team player. So those are our inspirational quotes from the Daily Inspirational Calendar by Lauren Dratch. Let's go ahead and get into the news because we do have some news to cover for you today. Here's our first story from Boston 25 News. I can see it better. A troubling trend, Healthcare Network announces plans to close Massachusetts hospital. This is something that we've certainly been covering, is that the consolidation of hospitals, closing of hospitals, etc. So let's get into it. The largest physician-led healthcare network in the United States has announced a plan to close a hospital in Massachusetts in the coming months. Steward Healthcare on Monday notified state officials of its plan to close New England Sinai Acute Long-Term Care and Rehabilitation Hospital in Stoughton and place patients in other facilities by early April 2024. In a statement, Steward Healthcare said it can no longer afford to keep the Stoughton facility open, citing chronic low reimbursement rates for services to Medicare and Medicaid patients, as well as the loss of $22 million from the NESH operations. It says nearly 75% of Steward Hospital patients are public pay, which chronically underpays, sometimes at rates less than the cost of delivery services. Unlike nonprofit systems, Steward does not have a multi-billion-dollar investment portfolio to fall back on. Steward Healthcare is the largest owner of community-based hospitals, the largest provider of inpatient behavioral health, and employs the highest percentage of union employees of any other hospital system in Massachusetts. Unfortunately, NESH's planned closure continues a troubling trend for healthcare in Massachusetts, with access to community-based care continues to decay because of sustained under reimbursement, the network added. The network vowed to coordinate with all NESH patients and their families over the next 120 days to find appropriate continuing care, utilizing the more than 150 skilled nursing facilities located within 25 miles of the hospital. So, based in Dallas, Steward operates 33 hospitals across Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, Louisiana, Massachusetts, Ohio. So again, we're going to see more of these trends, and this brings up what we've been talking about with our argument then about who owns hospitals, where's your health care coming from, because then we have this coming up. So this story is coming out of Washington. And it says senators launch bipartisan probe of private equity's growing role in U.S. healthcare. 2 U.S. senators have launched a bipartisan investigation into secretive and powerful private equity firms' involvement in healthcare in the nation, demanding documents from executives associated with 2 hospital systems to assess how much for-profit they have generated through their complex financial arrangements and whether the deals harmed patients and clinicians. Sheldon Whitehouse, the Rhode Island Democrat who chairs the Senate Budget Committee, and Chuck Grassley, the Iowa Republican who is the committee's ranking member, are spearheading the inquiry. It began in March when Grassley requested information from private equity giant Apollo Global Management, owner of Ottumwa Regional Health Center, a Life Point health facility in southeast Iowa, where a male nurse assaulted at least 9 sedated patients in 2021 and 2022. The nurse later died from an overdose at the facility. Grassley said in a statement, when it comes to our nation's hospitals, a business model that prioritizes profits over patient care and safety is unacceptable. The shocking events at Ottumwa Regional Health Center prompted me to ask tough questions about how financial maneuvers by private equity and related companies have negatively impacted the resources and thereby patient care at our rural hospitals. I look forward to working with Senator Whitehouse to get answers and ensure that our nation's hospitals provide high quality health care to the communities and patients they serve. With Whitehouse joining the investigation, it has expanded to include private equity deals affecting 2 hospitals in his home state of Rhode Island. The transactions involve Prospect Medical Holdings, an operator of 16 safety net hospitals in 4 states that was owned until recently by a group led by Leonard Green and Partners, a private equity firm in Los Angeles. Of interest to Senate investigators are deals involving Prospect's medical ownership of Our Lady of Fatima hospitals in North Providence and Regional Williams Medical Center in Providence, and also facilities in Pennsylvania and California. As a private equity has moved into healthcare, we have become increasingly concerned about the associated negative outcomes for patients, Whitehouse said in a statement. From facility closures to compromised care is now a familiar story. Private equity buys out a hospital, saddles it with debt, and then reduces operating costs by cutting services and staff, all while investors pocket millions. Before the dust settles, a private equity firm sells and leaves town, leaving communities to pick up the pieces. So there's more to this story, so I encourage you to go ahead and look into it even more. But I wanted you to make you aware, because as we've been talking about who owns the hospitals, are they for-profit, nonprofit, there's a lot more into this. And this came from NBC News. So go ahead and read the story on NBC News to get more information. But it's very eye-opening when you read about this. And that brings us back to this also story coming out of Detroit. This is coming from Metro Detroit, and this was recently announced on their local news there. That in Metro Detroit, nursing home workers protest low wages. And we've been talking about wages across the board in hospitals, long-term care, other healthcare facilities, and what we can do to help and support our workers. So here we go. Let's get into it. Workers are saying that they make some of the lowest wages for nursing homes in the entire region, but it's starting to have a trickle-down effect on the residents. Nursing home workers are protesting at the Orchards at Northwest with an informational picket. We really want higher wages, more staffing, said a worker, Elise Clark. Workers are saying that they make some of the lowest wages for nursing homes in the entire region, but it's again starting to have that trickle-down effect. More important, it's for the residents. They need proper care. They don't need the wait because we're short-handed, said worker Isaac Smith. Community members have also announced their displeasure with the facility. Mary Williams has a loved one inside. She says, it does concern me because the other things that are going on and that are disturbing. I mean, as far as patients not being taken care of in the best way possible. Workers insist they're being taken advantage of with no increase in pay since inflation. On a grander scale, other facilities under the Orchards umbrella have also faced the same issues. Back in June, over 70 nursing home workers at the Redford location went on strike for 8 days. Smith says when you're in this field of work, people need people to help them out. That's why they're here, because they need the help. They can't help themselves. Workers don't want to resort to striking because of the well-being of the patients. So we'll see what happens. Again, we're seeing more striking across the nation as healthcare workers are protesting the working conditions that they're in and the low wages. So let's keep an eye on this emerging trend as well. Which brings us into this story. This one came up and for some of us, it's no surprise because we've talked about this before on this channel. But this is on Healthcare Finance News, and they report that Black and Hispanic patients experience insults in healthcare settings. Racism and discrimination is unfortunately still a common occurrence in many settings, including healthcare. A new KFF survey shows that many Hispanic, Black, Asian, and American Indian and Alaska Native adults in the U.S. believe they must modify both their mindset and the way they look to stave off potential mistreatment during healthcare visits. The KFF 2023 survey on racism, discrimination, and health is the first in a series, also documents the association of racism and discrimination with worse health and well-being, including heightened tendencies toward feeling anxious, lonely, or depressed. The large nationally representative survey finds that among those who use healthcare the past 3 years, 60% of Black adults, about half of American Indian and Alaska Native at 52%, and Hispanic at 51% adults, and 42% of Asian adults say they must prepare for possible insults from providers or staff and or feel they must be very careful about their appearance to be treated fairly during healthcare visits at least some of the time. 1/3 of white adults report doing these things. Such preparations, behaviors documented in other research arenas as heightened vigilance, likely a response to past experience, the survey suggests. 1/3 of adults overall report at least one of several negative experiences with a healthcare provider in the past 3 years. The negative experience asked in the survey were about include a provider assuming something about them without asking, suggesting they were personally to blame for a health problem, ignoring a direct request or question, or refusing to prescribe pain medication they thought they needed. About 1/4 of Black adults and 1 in 5 American Indian and Alaska Native adults say they experienced at least one of these and that their race or ethnicity was a reason why they were treated this way, as do 15% of Hispanic adults, 11% of Asian adults, compared to just 4% of white adults. So, for example, 22% of Black adults who were pregnant or gave birth in the past 10 years say they were refused pain medication they thought they needed, roughly twice the share of white adults with a pregnancy or birth experience at 10%. Among Black adults, those with self-reported darker skin tones report more discrimination. Black adults who say their skin color is very dark, or medium are more likely to experience and report an experience with discrimination than Black adults who say their skin color is very light or light. For example, Black adults who had at least half of recent visits with a provider who shares their background are more likely than those who have fewer of these visits to say that their doctor explained things in a way they could understand it, 90% versus 85%. Involved them in decision making about their care, 84% versus 73%. Understood or respected their cultural values or beliefs, 84% versus 76%, or asked them about their work, housing, or access to food or transportation, 39% versus 24% during recent visits. So the survey finds that Black, Hispanic, and Asian adults who have more healthcare visits with providers who share their racial and ethnic backgrounds report more frequent, positive, and respectful interactions. So there's more to this story. There's more to this report. I would encourage you to read it. It's a very interesting report, and I have to say, as a African American healthcare provider myself, I've often experienced it too. And I consciously or unconsciously think when I go into the doctor, I always tell them, one, don't tell them I'm in healthcare, because I want them to talk to me and explain things to me, because otherwise they assume what they're talking about, and you may not. You may have questions. And two, I also want to make sure I look like I'm going somewhere. This whole thing in the back of my mind about your mom saying, make sure if you're going to go to the hospital you wear clean underwear, that type of thing. And so I do want to present myself a certain way when I go get seen. And I can imagine that it would be the same. So there's more to this. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. So let's go on to this next story. This is coming out of Washington State. And we've talked about this before, but I wanted to give you any updates. And this did just come out in Healthcare Exact or Health Exact today. And it says Washington nurses demand action over patient violence. After a wave of violence, nurses from Seattle Children's Hospital have signed onto a letter demanding help from management to mitigate issues ranging from violence against nurses to continued understaffing of the juvenile psychiatric unit. In the statement, the Washington Nurses Association cites 15 incidents from September through November in which nurses have been injured, property has been damaged, police were called to restrain patients, or nurses were too few in number to manage patients on the unit. Further, the statement claims security presence was lacking on multiple occasions despite the increase in incidents. So a total of 44 nurses from Seattle Children's have signed onto the letter, which attributed the chaos to a systemic crisis in pediatric mental health. So again, it says that they've made previous complaints in June with the Washington State Department of Labor and Industries, citing concerns with incidents in the psychiatric unit. No violations or penalties were assessed, but inspectors did make recommendations aimed at curbing further incidents. However, according to nurses on the unit, things have only gotten worse. The nurse says since those recommendations were issued, the volume and severity of safety incidents have increased. Nurses want to see more communication and transparency from hospital management around the crisis. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that disturbing trend. And more positive news, looking at nursing homes, one bill in New York is set to increase the personal needs allowance for nursing home residents. Legislation introduced Tuesday would increase how much money New Yorkers in nursing homes can keep of their income to use for personal items. People in nursing homes who receive Medicaid benefits are allowed a personal needs allowance or money they're permitted to keep from their personal income that remains exempt from nursing home care costs. Any income outside of the P&A is used for the person's cost of care. The new legislation, sponsored by Senate Disabilities Committee Chair John Mannion, proposes to increase the personal needs allowance for the average nursing home resident in the state from $50 to $128 per month. And so I wanted you to be aware of this because currently in the state of Indiana, I believe it's still around $52 a month that residents who are on Medicaid are allowed to have every month for their personal care needs. So that includes buying clothes, if they want to buy any additional snacks, if they want to get their hair done, if they want to buy toiletries instead of using what's at the facility because often it's off the cheapest. It may not be the best. And one size does not always fit all when it comes to personal care needs. And so that falls either on their family to provide it, or if they have no family, they have to use that $50 or roughly $52 a month that they get on their personal care needs. So Mannion says senior citizens and nursing home residents deserve to live with dignity and respect, and that includes having the resources they need to cover their personal expenses without worry. People in nursing homes use the money again to pay for minor general expenses, including toiletries, clothes, shoes, and personal care services like haircuts. New York's current personal needs allowance is $35 to $90 per month, depending on a person's circumstances, such as being a veteran. That rate was set in 1988 and it has not been altered since. The P&A has not increased in over 3 decades. It is well past time that we address the significant quality of life issue on behalf of New York seniors, Mannion said. So the first day of the 2024 legislation session is January 3rd, so they're looking to take up this bill. I hope that they do get it. It's much needed. This cost of living has gone up, and I think we need to reflect that in how we take care of our seniors. And I'm going to challenge you. Can you do your daily, your monthly living on $50 a month? Think about that. Okay. Here's our next story. I don't know if you remember the case of this nurse, Nurse Sobel. out of Michigan. She has been convicted of murder. She's now had her license revoked. So, according to this, she was abusing methamphetamine when her 3-year-old patient died under her care, has permanently lost her nursing license, according to the Michigan Department of Attorney General. The Michigan Board of Nursing Disciplinary Subcommittee voted on November the 21st to permanently revoke the registered nursing license of 43-year-old Judith Sobel, previously of South Haven. Sobel was convicted of second-degree murder by a Berrien County jury, according to the office. In May, she was sentenced to 30 to 75 years in prison. In June of 22, the AG's office said Sobel showed up for her overnight shift under the influence of meth. She was providing care for a 3-year-old girl who was on a ventilator. In the early morning, the girl's parents found Sobel incoherent and their child unresponsive, with her trachea tube disconnected. Resuscitation efforts were not successful. The nurse later admitted to using meth to Coloma Township officers, and investigators found meth pipes and a container of crystal meth in her purse. This was a tragic murder, and our hearts go out to the victim's family who lost their child, Attorney General Dana Nessel said in a release. In addition to her very lengthy prison sentence, Sobel will never practice healthcare again. Before Sobel was convicted of second-degree murder, the AG's office issued an administrative complaint against her based on the alleged misconduct, and the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs similarly suspended Sobel's nursing license. In February, the Board of Nursing revoked her license and issued a $150,000 fine. But although the subcommittee imposed the longest period of revocation it legally could, the AG's office said Sobel still had the opportunity to petition for reinstatement after waiting 3 years and paying the fine. After Sobel's conviction, the Department of Attorney General in August issued a second administrative complaint against Sobel. This prompted the Board of Nursing to subsequently to permanently revoke her nursing license in November. Tragic case. And in historical news, this might be of interest of those that you are history buffs and are interested in what's happening with history. This is on Florence Nightingale. CNN reports that Florence Nightingale final photos of the nursing pioneer are now up for auction. So in London, photos thought to be amongst the last taken of Florence Nightingale are among a number of items related to the famed English nurse going up for auction in London. The small sepia images were taken by Eliza Frances Fanny Petit, who was Nightingale's companion late in her life, and show the nurse sitting in an armchair, according to auction house Roseberries. Oh, wow. This is a great picture. And you know what? I'm going to show it to you because I think you kind of would want to see that. So let me present, share screen. Window. There you go. If you can see this picture of Florence Nightingale later in life, I think that's pretty cool. All right. So then let's go on with the story. It says they measure about 5 by 9 by 5 by 9 centimeters, or 2 by 3 by 2 by 3 inches, and were taken around 1910. Nightingale died on August 13th of that year at the age of 90. The family history behind these photographs leads us to believe that they may be the final images taken of Nightingale. Born in 1820, Nightingale was an English nurse who became the first woman to receive the Order of Merit for her efforts treating wounded soldiers during the 1853 to 1856 Crimean War. She became famous as the Lady with the Lamp because of her reputation for making rounds at night to check on the patients. So this collection is expected to go at auction, so around $15,000 to £25,000, or $19,000 to $31,000. We have two nurses making a difference segments, and this first one is on a young nurse who had just started her nursing career in cardiac care and ended up becoming one of the patients. So it says Andy Hyong um, eagerly began her first nursing job this year in New Hampshire with a desire to specialize in cardiac care from CBS News. She was excited about attending a November practice session on how to respond to someone in cardiac arrest, but as things were getting underway, she began to feel dizzy and nauseous and felt like she needed to sit down. That's the last thing I remember. I woke up in a room full of doctors and nurses. It turns out that she herself had gone into cardiac arrest and needed help immediately. Her colleagues sprang into action. Instead of practicing chest compressions on a mannequin in a simulated event, they went to work on her. One checked her carotid, one her femoral arteries, and she did not have a pulse, instructor Lisa Davenport said. The nurses started CPR and a code blue or medical emergency team was called. What was really stressful about the situation was that we never had a real code blue in the center, Davenport said. We trained for them all the time. Davenport shouted for help. Luckily, the Lebanon's hospital's critical care team was nearby, attending a separate session. More nurses came in, hooked Hong up to the defibrillator for monitoring, inserted an IV, and placed her on oxygen. A doctor and a nurse from another department rushed in with a crash cart. Hong woke up, was waking up by the time the emergency team arrived. Davenport estimated 15 minutes passed from the time she slumped over to when they got her on the stretcher and sent her to the ER. But it felt longer. Charmaine Martin, one of the nurses at the scene, agreed it was a very scary moment, but also one where I saw and felt supported, and we all worked as a team. Huang, who returned to work, couldn't believe what happened. She says, I would say I'm your pretty average, healthy 23-year-old. She goes to the gym 4 times a week, runs, eats well. I'm on my feet 12 to 13 hours a day at work. So I want to make sure I'm in shape for all that. So again, I want to say congratulations to those nurses. And they are the nurses making a difference. So I think this is great. So I'm glad that she's back working. And Andy, I wish you all the best and hope that you get well and further your career. So then I wanted to lastly point out this article from nurse.org. And this announcement, this actually was reported through the Atlanta Journal-Constitution about the nurse.org winners for Best of Nursing Award winners. So I just wanted to make mention of them because I think nurses, we are not celebrated enough. So we have Nurse of the Year, which is Wali Khan. He's a first-generation college graduate who began his nursing journey a dozen years ago. He wrote for nurse.org. He's from Pakistan. He's an immigrant. And he is the Nurse of the Year. He works as a certified registered nurse anesthetist. Congratulations. Melanie Van Sistine, who founded Mel's Crafty Corner, which sells nurse-made products. She is the Nurse Entrepreneur of the Year. Nurse Influencer of the Year. Oh, congratulations to Nurse Erica, nurseerica.com. I actually follow her on Instagram. So welcome and congratulations to Nurse Erica. Let's see. So those are the nurses making a difference. So congratulations to winning those things. I'm excited for you. I think that's great. All right, that's it. That's the end of the news segment for today. And I want to thank you for tuning in. And I want to thank you for following us on the Nurse Academy show for our podcast. And if you're a nurse out there and you're in business and you're an entrepreneur, let me know. I want to highlight you on the show. And I want to thank you for watching the Nursing News You Can Use show on our Facebook pages and our YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to all that we do in our great content. And for those of you that are on our Nurse Shark Academy website, you can now get our videos and our live feed from our 2 shows. So I want to thank you for all of that you do and for being there with us, and have a great rest of your evening, and see you next week.